I am going to change things up a little bit from here. So towards the end of the day in particular, I'm going to go through and do some setup things. And I debated putting them at the beginning because normally when we're working with your company, we start out doing some of these setup things in the beginning. But I went ahead and put them at the end because I think they may have more meaning for you if we come back and do them at the end. So I'm going to start covering a couple gotchas with the login itself throughout the day, raw material formula, finished good batch, then those couple setup things. So when we're dealing with the Vicinity login, a couple different things that I want to cover. The first is how do you set up a new user, and also how you get in these programs. Notice that we do have two separate icons, a V2 and a V4 icon. And when I go into the V2 icon, I actually have to log in. So you'll have a user ID and a password to get into V2. That will become important later, because you'll see you don't need them. To set up new users, all right. You come to Setup System and User. And in this user setup screen is where you can create new users and assign a user ID. You can call them a longer name, first and last name, that kind of fun stuff. Assign their password. Assign them to a class. And we'll talk about the class a little bit more. And assign them to a Windows logon. All right? That's the domain name and the username that you use to sign into the computer itself from where you're going to run Vicinity. All right? Where that becomes really important is what you'll see when we get to V4 is you never log in. All right? And so some people think, oh my goodness, anybody can get in. It's not anybody can get in. What it does is it takes your Windows login information, sees who you are, based on that login information, it says, oh, you must be this user, and gives you the rights that are necessary for that user. Okay? So people who are new to the system, this is getting set up anyway because we're already into V4, and so when you first set up new users, you're tending to set it up. It's not a problem. People who've been on the system for a long time, you may have never filled in this Windows login field. It's been here since probably the beginning of time, but you may have never filled it in because you didn't need to. And now, particularly as you're heading into V4, this field has to be filled in or you're never going to get into V4. Down towards the bottom, we have company IDs. This is where you can give an individual, a user, access to different companies. So if you have a test company and a live, and your advanced users need access to both, but your normal production workers, you just want them in live or something like that, you can turn on and off different what's there. The one that I skimmed right over is the class ID. This class ID is what really gives a person rights. So if I come into Setup System User Class, and I pull up my admin class ID, a couple of different things here. This very top part where it says active users, no access, view, and delete, what that is doing is allowing a user that is logged into Vicinity to kick out PUM licenses. Sometimes a user's in there, their computer shuts down without them exiting out of Vicinity, whether it's a power failure, whether it's a terminal server and they just didn't bother to log out, whatever. They shut down, and it leaves a Vicinity license hung out there. If that same user logs back in, it'll use that same license. A lot of times it's not that same user who's logging back in, it's their friend over here, and they can't get in because all the licenses are in use. So we have a way to clear them out. I go to File, Active Users, and this is now available in V4 as well. It shows me who is logged in. So if I had 5 different records right here, I could come in here to clear them out. What this no access, view, and delete is telling you what access I would have on that particular screen. Can I get in there at all? Can I get in there and just see who's logged in but not do anything about it? or can I get in there and clear out home licenses? The rest of the screen has to do with making things read-only. So most of our screens, if you can get into the screen, you can do anything in the screen. If you have access to the screen, you've got it all. But there are some select screens that you can make read-only. Batch entry, component entry, formula entry, etc. So that's what all this part is dealing with, is making certain screens read-only for that class. Then we get to the fun one. Under the menu access, what you'll see is these module names here in this drop-down. Notice how they're marching across the top of my screen here. Under each one, so under setup, and let's get setup. This one's easier to see. Product development, component formula, formula reports, component cost roll-up, etc. Component formula, formula reports, okay. If, for a particular user class, I don't want them to have access to a screen, this box shouldn't be checked. All right? Or if they should have access and they don't, go ahead and check the box. When we're initially doing training and initially doing setup, we typically just have the one class of admin and everybody can get in and do everything. Because particularly when you're training, the last thing you want to be doing is fighting, oh, I can't get to that screen. However, once you are trained and you've figured out, okay, those are what those different Vicinity functions are, these are the people in my organization that should or should not have access to them, you really want to revisit, come up with some reasonable user classes that, you know, this person, they can do batch entry, but they really can't modify our formulas. This person, you know, needs to be able to do components and formulas because they're in the lab, but they really shouldn't be in production doing batches, that kind of thing. So that is what I at least wanted to show on users and user class. All right. So I got into V2. I used my login. Now I'm starting up V4. I might create a splash screen. Actually, I like our splash screen. But you'll notice I'm never keying in a user ID or password. I am just in. All right. That came from that Windows login field that was on the user setup. If you have been on Vicinity for a while, so you've been in V2, but now you're coming into V4, the database behind the scenes is the same. Most of the screens are essentially the same, but they have a new look and feel, new layout. For those of you on GP and SL, just having things over on the left probably feels somewhat familiar. As I come into my different modules over here on the left, my options are changing up here on the right. And so we're going to be starting out in component entry up here. We have this nice Vicinity training section, and it goes to videos, or it used to go to videos. And then there's something about Google bought YouTube, bought somebody else, and so the feed that we were using is turned off now, and so now you get this one that says YouTube device support. In the next version, it will go away until it comes back and we have a new, I think, RSS feed or something like that. So this little section is going to be changing for a little bit. It is really nice when it's working because it gives you some different videos that are basic videos, similar to what I'm going to be going through here of, you know, here's how you set up the component. Some basic startup videos. But in this latest, thanks to, like I said, Google, YouTube, and all kinds of friendships. That is that section. The other thing to point out in V4, you can see down in the bottom left, maybe, you can see through my head, the company and user that you're logged into. In V2, it was in the bottom right. But I do get support calls sometimes of, oh, my data's gone. Yeah, you're logged into test now. Okay. So it is there. You can see what company you're logged in right there. You can change companies. You can do it in either one. You would just go to File, Company, We have put in place something right now so that you can't change companies when you have both V2 and V4 open. So that was causing some issues. So if you try, at the moment I have V2 and V4 open, if I try and change companies right now, it's going to tell me log out of the other one and try. So you can switch companies in either one, just only have one.